So hello everybody and welcome. My name is Caroline. I see that we have a couple of people on. Thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar on multi-day touring. We'd like to start by just asking the folks who are on to type into the chat either what touring you've done or what you're hoping to get out of today and learn today. So if you can just go ahead and type that into the chat window, that's great. You can find the chat window if you hover over your Zoom screen. It should be in the bottom. There's a little icon that says chat. So I'll give you a minute to do that. And I'll just tell you a little bit about our program and what else we've been doing. So this course is part of the Safe Cycling Thunder Bay program, which is funded by the City of Thunder Bay and delivered by Eco Superior. Throughout the summer, we've been running a whole series of kind of different webinars with topics from urban riding to mapping to what else, gearing, braking, and hills. A lot of them really kind of complement what is going to be covered today in the touring webinar. So I'd encourage you to check out our other courses as well, and I know that some of you have been at them. So I'm just going to share that link in the chat. So if you'd like to check out our other recorded webinars, please check out the link in the chat. We've had 6 of these courses, and this is the 6th and final. We're really lucky to have Frank on as our speaker today. He's very experienced in touring, and then we'll have Megan, who's joined Frank on some of his trips and has done some of her own touring as well. She might just be a voice chiming in as well. So at the end of the webinar, we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A. So feel free to ask questions at that point, but at any point you can type your questions into the chat just so you don't forget them, and then we'll visit those at the end. So we've gotten some responses to the question I asked, what you're hoping to get out of today or what touring that you've done. And it seems like folks are just joining out of general interest. John said he hasn't done a tour yet. I see there's another Frank as well as somebody whose username is just owner in the participants list. So feel free to chime in what you're hoping to get out of today or what tours you've done. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Frank. If anybody else, oh, there's another one, interested in a bike and barge in the Netherlands post-pandemic. We have a cycling instructor who's done maybe that tour, maybe another one, but I know that the kind of bike and barge style tour is something that comes up in Frank's presentation. So with that, I am going to pass you over to Frank. Now, Frank, were you able to pull up the presentation? Do you want to try to screen share it, or do you want me to do that?
If you could do it, that'd be great, because I can't seem to get the options below anymore where I could choose chat and stuff like that.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
I will pull that right up.
So should I get started as you're doing that?
Maybe give me just a second
okay.
so that I can pull it up, because I actually need to open it again.
Am I still there?
You're still here.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's just opening up. Should just be a second. Oh, there we go. Oh. All right, perfect. All set, Frank, you go ahead.
Okay, so so you have control, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Hi, everybody. I'm Frank, and I'm also known as Pancho because that's my nickname in Spanish, nickname for Francisco, because I spent a lot of time actually in South America on one of my tours. Some of the tours, just to quickly tell you, some of the tours I've been on was a solo ride around Lake Superior. That was my first big one. That was no tenting, but I stayed at motels, bed and breakfast. Now, these are bed and breakfasts before Airbnb existed, as well as friends' places. Crossed Iowa, I've crossed Wisconsin, done that several times. I did a ride from Vancouver to Tijuana. That was a solo intent. Did a world trip where I hit all the continents except Antarctica. Another one was Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. Another one was Provence, France to Tuscany, Italy. Another one was Alaska, and that was RV supported. So we had one person driving the RV while the rest of us rode our bikes. Another one was Jasper to Banff, and a recent one, or some of the recent ones were up in Tuktoyaktuk, the Arctic Ocean, down towards very close to Dawson City. That's up in Northwest Territories and Yukon. And that was with that one was with Megan. And Megan is on this presentation as well. Now, a couple other things I want to mention is I have many subjects, so if there's any subject you really want to talk about, please send that in chat to Caroline. And so if there's anything that you want to definitely concentrate on, okay? But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead. Now, I have a lot of stuff, so I'm going to fly through a lot of stuff, but enough to just get it into your head so you could hear about it. By the way, you know, I've never been on radio, but now I know what a radio announcer sounds must feel like. I'm not hearing any responses, and I don't see anyone's heads nodding, of course, or anything like that. So anyway, so I'm just going to keep on going. Now, what I'm going to primarily be talking about is self-supported tours on bicycle road bikes, road tours. But I want to talk a little bit about supported tours as well. Just to let you know that that is a way that you could also do tours. And in fact, that's often a good stepping stone from going from no cycle touring at all to possibly solo or with a group of self-supported tours. So some examples are riding with a family or friend to drive and haul your stuff from place to place. Another one that's quite common is sharing driving. So you might have 6 riders, and one would take the car up, 10 or 20 or 30 kilometers or 50 kilometers or whatever you agree on, and then everyone else would catch up to the van or to the vehicle, and then someone else would drive. So you kind of share driving. And sometimes whoever drives the vehicle up will ride back, meet the group, and then ride with them to the vehicle. I hope that I didn't get too complicated in trying to explain it. Also, there are many kinds of events that are supported. For instance, cross-state events. BAM, that's Bike Across Minnesota, RAGBRAI, Grab-R, there's millions of them. Or at least 50 of them in the States. Music-oriented ride, like in New Orleans, or fundraising, like the MS multiple sclerosis fundraisers, things like that. And there are bicycle hotels, like in Italy, where they supply you with all the gear and accommodations and food. So you stay at the hotel and you do rides from that hotel. Every day is a different route. And in ones like that, they also cater them to your ability. So you might, I think they have about 3 or 4 different levels. So if you're a very inexperienced or not that strong of a rider, you might go in the group that does 15 kilometers an hour or slower. If you're one of the strongest riders, you'd probably be in a group that goes 30 kilometers or faster. And anything in between. So it's kind of cool how they cater to whatever you feel comfortable with. And those are always led by a very experienced cycling guide. And there's also bicycle tour companies. They give you here's examples. Some they'll just give you a map, and then you go from place to place, and they will haul your gear from place to place. What I mean by gear is, let's say, extra bike parts, clothes, and anything like that. So you're not carrying it with you. There are in-to-in rides, hotels, hostels. There could be tour companies that will set your tent up for you. There's some where they will combine, and I like these. I've never been on these yet, and I've tried to organize one of these, is combining with cooking classes, such as in Italy, where you'd ride maybe 30, 40 kilometers, and then you have a cooking course, and you'd eat it, and you'd be really hungry, and you'd be happy you ate it, and then the next day you do the same thing to a different spot. Also wine tasting ones and all that. Now, of course, you have to spit out the wine, okay? Don't swallow it if you're tasting, because you can start getting lazy for the riding. Um, and some offer food and snacks along the way, some don't. So there's all different levels of support that you can get on these supported tours. And there are others too that, for instance, there's one that crosses Canada, and they stay in tents, but their gear is cared for them, and everyone in that case shares the cooking. So today might be my day to cook dinner, and then tomorrow might be Bill's turn to cook dinner, et cetera, et cetera. And also, and this I'm just going to touch on because you guys mentioned the barge tours. Is there another type of supported tour? Is a riverboat tour, where you stay in the riverboat. For instance, let's say the Danube River. You stay in the riverboat overnight, and then the next day you'd have breakfast. You start riding the bike the same direction as the riverboat's going, and then you have a designated spot to meet the riverboat again at the end of the day, and then you go into the riverboat. You clean up, you have dinner, you stay the night, next morning you have breakfast, and then you're off again down the river. Those are kind of cool. I've never done that yet, but I really am interested in doing that. Um, okay, now types of groups. You can go by yourself. Now, if you go by yourself, now I'm talking self-supported tours, okay? So if you go by yourself, you'll find yourself getting invited to stay at someone's house or set your tent at someone's house a lot more than if you're with a group. If there's two people in the group, then you could share loads of tasks. And it'd be still fairly easy to get an invite to stay in someone's home. Now, with group rides, what I'm doing, by the way, is telling you a little bit of the pros and cons, or what you might expect, or what could work better or not if you do which ones I'm talking about. So group ones, of course, you're going to have a lot more people. That's 3 or more. So the more people you have, the less chance someone's going to say, hey, come on over our house. We're having a barbecue tonight. Because if you have 7, they might not be exactly as prone to inviting you. But of course, if you have a group ride, there's safety in numbers. And also you could share loads and tasks. So if you guys are cooking, maybe 2 people could deal with the cooking the dinner that night while everyone else sets the tents, and et cetera, et cetera. And there could also be rides with family and kids. And sometimes I've met, for instance, starting to go into the Andes, family from France, for instance, on a year off with 3 kids. One was 4, 7, and 10. So one was in a trailer, and another one was in, I don't know if you ever saw those, I forget what's called. If someone knows what it's called, you hook one wheel and a handlebar on a frame that gets hooked onto the seat post of the parent's bike. So the child's behind the bike, so it almost looks like a tandem, because you'll see an extra wheel, and the child gets to actually pedal and kind of feel like they're contributing, and they do contribute.
Caroline here, that it's called a trail-a-bike.
Okay, good. Trailer bike. Thanks. Now, if you're going to do group rides, you should consider how far you're going to ride each day. Of course, you have to agree on the route. Now, some people, by the way, are okay with making the route super, super relaxed, and some people like to have it know where they're going to be every 5 kilometers. So, and you find everything in between. I remember when I went from Vancouver to Mexico, I met someone who said, oh, San Francisco's on this route. I'm thinking, oh my God, San Francisco, one of the biggest cities, well-known cities in North America. And where other people almost could tell me when a fly is going to get fly by their by their face. I'm being facetious, but anyway. So some people know everything that's going to happen ahead of them, what to expect, and some people don't know anything of what to expect. And both are good. It's whatever works for you. But if you do want to do that and you're with a group, you just make sure that you have that same approach, or it could get quite problematic. Also, what you should think about if you're going with a group is how early or how late do you want to start? Do you want to go out to the bars at night, or do you want to have at restaurants, or cook your own dinners, stuff like that? Those are all things that you have to consider. What kind of places do you want to sleep in? Some people are too nervous staying in hostels or things like that, or some people it's totally okay with them. So these are the kind of things actually you'd have to talk about even if it's not a bike tour. Even if it's just a driving tour, you still would have to know that. Also, consider how many days off you want to have. If you're doing a really long trip, let's say one that's like a month or longer, you might want to agree on, let's stop at least once a week or something like that. Now, some of the types of accommodations are, let's say you want to tent/camp. Do you want a wild or stealth camp? That's where you stay in crown land or state-owned property. Or do you want to stay in people's yards? And of course, there's also paid options like provincial parks, state parks, national parks, things like that. And some places have a very low cost for bikers and hikers. You should always ask about that. Now, ideas of paid accommodation. Some people call these credit card riding. So that's where you aren't carrying as much stuff with you. You might just have a pack sack or maybe just a couple of panniers and carrying just a change of clothes or something like that. That's called credit card riding sometimes. So you could stay at, and this still is relatively a new concept, Airbnb. It's only been around for what, about 10 years? But Airbnb, hostels, motels, resorts, turnkey places. What a turnkey place is, you could get to somewhere where all you do is you get the combination and you go into this place. It's kind of like maybe like a townhouse, but like usually just a one room, kind of like a motel thing. You put in your combination, you're in, next morning you're out, you're done. You've paid by credit card. Pensioni, guest houses, and of course there's online booking sites, like especially I use booking.com a lot. If you decide that you want to stay in places ahead of time. And then you have to decide, am I going to book these things day by day or am I going to book them all before I start? That, if you're not realizing it, they both have their pros and cons. If you do book everything ahead of time, then you're stuck to a schedule. If you have problems with your bike or problems with weather, you might end up getting really stressed out and trying to stick to that schedule. So what some people do, if you stay in paid accommodations, is that you kind of go as you go. You might book one, possibly 2 days ahead. Often in rides, like when I was in Serbia and all that with some friends, we booked when we got into the town. So we just hoped that there would be something there. Sometimes we book it in the morning, but not always. Now, there's free accommodations too. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but there's something called warmshowers.org. That's an organization online that people sign up, and they sign up to be hosts for cyclists. So in a few days from now, I'm going to have 2 people staying from my place. They contacted me 2 days ago and want to stay at my place. And so they're going to stay at my place for free. And I've been a host for, since 1993, and I've been sometimes now a guest. For the last 5 years, I've been using Warm Showers a bit. There's also something called couchsurfing.com. And consider friends, consider family, consider offers from strangers. But of course, you have to feel comfortable and safe before you consider that. Once I remember when we were in Ecuador, Tad and I, this one person, there was just something about him that we both did not feel right, and we said no thank you. Instead, we stayed in a hotel. But now you have to remember, in Ecuador, especially then, 20 years ago, the hotel was maybe $1.50, so it wasn't that much. And of course, you have Facebook and social media that can get you places to stay. In fact, we did that when we went up to Inuvik. Megan hooked up with some friends, or made some friends, Facebook friends up in Inuvik that put us up. So we were able to stay, we set up our tents in their yard, and then the next day they drove us to the start of our tour. Now, trips can span any time. It all depends on your resources, time, and all that. You can do a weekend, like a 2 or 3 day trip. In fact, sometimes there's this idea of, I call them one-nighters, where you could ride, let's say, from Thunder Bay to Quequebeca, stay the night in Quequebec, and then ride home the next day. Now, For some people, 25K might be a lot because that's roughly the distance. Some people that might be a little. And if that's a little, you just take a different route. You take a rounded route, you know, take the scenic route or something. But so that those are like for a 2 or 3 day. Then you can go up to 7 days. You can go, you know, several weeks. You can go months. And there are people that have gone years. A couple of good friends of mine just came out with a book actually about their trip, a 3-year world trip. Now, when you ride, you have to think of, sorry, where to ride. You have to think of that too. How far do you think you're going? How are you thinking of going? What route do you want to take? Now, some types of rides are called point to point. So for instance, Vancouver to Montreal. Now, I'm saying these big numbers, I mean, these big places. I hope I'm not overwhelming people because these rides could also be dried into Ignace, you know, so it doesn't have to be thousands and thousands of kilometers. Then there's, and there are pros and cons to point rides, and I'll tell you in a minute. Loop rides, what a loop ride is, you start at a certain place and you end there. It could be a couple of days, it could be a month, it could be a long time, but you end there. Now, what's nice about that is you don't have to, you don't necessarily have to haul. Oh, wait, let me rephrase that. When loop rides, if you're doing a loop ride, let's say you're in France, let's say you start in Paris and you end in Paris, you could leave some gear wherever you started. For instance, if you fly to Paris, there's a good chance you're gonna have a bike box. What are you gonna do with that bike box? Because you're gonna need a bike box when you go back to Canada. So if it's a loop ride, you can hopefully find a place in Paris to keep your box while you're doing your trip. Come back, and then you don't have to go hustle. You don't have to go look for a bike shop that has a box because that box will be there for you. I did that when I was in Hungary a few years ago, where I stayed at a Warm Showers host, and they picked me up at the airport. This doesn't always happen, but this is really nice. He picked me up there at the airport. No, I took a cab. He drove me to the airport. Anyway, I took a cab from the airport to his place. Unboxed my bike, stayed the night, so the box stayed there. So when I came back 5 weeks later, he put me up the last night, and the box was there. So that was really handy because getting a box could be quite problematic. And many airplanes don't allow you to put your bicycle in the plane without a box. Some might let you use their airplane bag, like it's a big giant bag that you can wheel your bike in, but that's not always the case. That's seems to be less and less available now. Now, an even simpler type of touring is called a spoke or cloverleaf ride. What that is you stay in one spot for the night, and then you take a tour in the area of a loop that might be however far you want it to be, 20, 30, 60, 100 kilometers, and you stop at the same place. Next day, you get up at the same place, you start, but a different route. So you could have 6 or 7 routes starting from the same place. What's good about that is you don't have to worry about unloading your gear, packing it up every day, going from one place to another. Out and back rides, those are also kind of simpler too, in the sense that, again, that box thing I was telling you about. If you are going from, let's say, Rome to Venice and back, well, you could leave some of your stuff in Rome. You could leave that bike box, that dreaded bike box, back in Rome. Now, going from home is one of the simplest, but you got to figure out how to get back. Or going to home is kind of simple because you're going to end at home, but you got to get your stuff to where to wherever you're starting. There's also an idea of stage rides. So let's say you want to cross Canada, but you can't get the time off work. Well, you could ride maybe across one province every summer. Or whatever. Let's say you had a week. So you start in Vancouver, you ride for a week, wherever you stop, then the next year you start there. And then you continue that you get across the whole continent. Wind rides, I like this one. This is quite helter-skelter. Which way the wind is going is the way you're going to go. That could be fun, but then finding a place sometimes could be an issue. Riverboat rides, we talked a little bit about that earlier. Now, extreme climates you have to consider too. And I'm going to get a little bit into that a little bit later. Now, international riding is something that you might not uh, be ready for that. Should I skip this? Like, I'm not sure if anyone's still just looking to do little tours. Should I skip the international part? What do you think, Caroline?
I mean, they can see what's up on the screen as well, so I can just go through these slides pretty quickly.
Okay, then I'll just read out the points that I have too. Okay, there are routes across Europe. There are routes like designated routes that you can find where they have them listed on the road. So as you're going, you say, "Oh, I'm on Route 2. Oh, I'm on Route 6." Europe has these EV routes that are called Eurovelo trip routes. USA has routes. Many countries have routes, but you have to consider languages. Even though English is prevalent, it's still not as prevalent as you might think. Visas, insurance, the dangers. Now, this might seem like way out of whack, but it isn't. Political issues, wars, animals, like bears and crocodiles. And I'm not joking when I say that. We got pretty close to some crocodiles in Costa Rica. Landmines. When I was helping my friends that were on that 3-year tour, that I kind of stayed ahead of them by a week or two, when they told me they're going to a certain country, I said, guys, don't cross the ditches because they're known to have landmines. Geographical issues, volcanoes, earthquakes, weather. Now, there is a website called travel.gc.ca, which is a very good source if you're traveling international. That used to be called, maybe still is, DFATE, the Department of, I forget. Anyway, it's a Canadian government Department of something and International Trade. Foreign Affairs, yes, Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. Also, you have to think about people. Don't look rich. Don't get stolen from. Water safety and food safety is very important. If you can't cook, peel, or boil it, you should not consider eating it. Unless, of course, it's in a package like a chocolate bar. Water filter is something you might have to consider too. And so if you're doing that kind of traveling, you might want to have a volunteer from home or someone that you know that you could trust that could look ahead for you. So if they know you're going to be in these 3 countries in the next 4 weeks, they will see what the situation is and kind of keep you abreast. Now, when to ride? Seasons: cold, warm, rainy, dry, monsoons, windy, Patagonia. My friends that did a 3-year trip, the husband had to jump on his wife to keep her from getting blown off the side of the cliff when they were riding. So you have to know these kind of things to know what to expect. Also, things like which way is the prevalent wind? When I did the ride from Vancouver to Mexico, I bought this guidebook and I'm glad I did. By the way, I don't think I talked about this. I'm going to talk about this, but there are many guidebooks for places that you might be interested in. Check those out. You could find them online. And of course, you could find resources online that are just online where you wouldn't have a book that you would order. But anyway, I'm glad I got that book because it said it was better to go from north to south than the opposite, because August and September, it is more likely to have a north wind. And also they told me, I read in the guidebook, that August and September are the drier months too. So things like that are good to find out. And there are websites that give you ideas of the climate of different places, not the weather, but the climate. So in other words, what to expect, let's say in April in Uruguay, South America, for instance. And you can see which way the winds go and how much it rains. So that might make a difference. What the temperature is. I rode in Argentina one day it was 45 degrees. I didn't know how the heck I was going to make it the next day. Fortunately, it rained, cooled it off a bit. Also, you have to consider high and low tourist season. Is it going to be more costly because it's high season? It's going to be harder to find a place to stay because it's high season. Things like that. So getting to and from the start. There are many ways, and I'm just going to read them out quickly just so you know, like, don't limit yourself to what is the normal or maybe the more often used one. Train, bus, fly, hitchhike, ride share, driving services, friends, family. Driving services, I don't know if you know, but there are driving services that will take someone's car from Thunder Bay to, let's say, Florida, because people want to go vacation in Florida, but they don't want to drive their car. They want to fly, but they want their car. So if you're part of this driving services, you could offer them to drive their car from Thunder Bay to Florida, and then you could ride home with your bicycle from Florida back to Thunder Bay. I'm just giving you a lot of creative different ways of getting around. And of course, you have to think of the costs. Flying, there's going to be a cost to carry your bike. And of course, size restrictions, weight restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. A trick I do, so far I haven't been caught yet, is I put things in my bicycle box. Normally, your bicycle box in an airplane, you're not supposed to put anything besides the bike. And maybe just like the bike rack or something like that. You're not supposed to put clothes and that kind of stuff or your tent. I would let them know if they ever gave me a hard time about it. Say, that's in there to protect the bike from getting scratched. But otherwise, you're not supposed to do that. And then that means you'll have to have an extra bag and pay more. Also, if you're going to fly, I'd suggest go to a human that like at the check-in counter. Don't go to those kiosks, because those kiosks are totally they don't forget and they don't get soft. Sometimes someone might say, oh, you're going for this reason, oh, you're gonna go visit your grandma, oh, I won't charge you for that bike box, that's okay, today I feel good. But not those kiosks. They will charge you no matter what. Or the person that's gonna that you're checking in with might totally just forget. Remember, Megan? So getting to and from, like I mentioned earlier, out and back, loop, and cloverleafs, those are tend to be the simplest ones where you don't have to deal with getting to start or to the finish. And I already talked about from home to home, point to point. Now, shipping your bike, there's different ways to get your bike to wherever you want to go. You could fly with it, or which way you're going, if you're taking a train or a bus. But you can also ship it there ahead of time if you want, through a courier, or through a bus, or through mail. I've done that where I've done a tour in Carolina, and I took my bike to Rydens. I'm guessing everyone, I'm not sure if everyone here is from Thunder Bay or not, but Rydens is just over the border in the United States, about 60K from here. I took my bike there, all boxed up, got sent by UPS, I believe it was, from Rydens to North Carolina, and I sent it a week before. So by the time I sent it to a hotel, and the hotel received it for me, stayed the night in the hotel, set up my bike, and I was out the next day. There are also bicycle shipping services. Also, think of friends, family, social media. Now, there are often you can get a cardboard box at a bike store that has a lot of boxes, because they receive bikes in boxes. So you can go to them, and you're usually doing them a favor because they have to throw those out. So they usually would gladly give you the boxes. I always try to get the biggest box possible. That way I can put other stuff in it. And also, the bigger the box, the less you have to take your bike apart. Some airlines still give boxes, but I find that's getting less and less. There's one time I loved this one airline. I forget what it was, but it was in San Diego, and I was coming home. They gave me a box, and all I had to do was turn my handlebars, take off my pedals, and the bike went right in the box. I didn't have to take any of my wheels off. That was really handy. Oh, by the way, if you're flying, I don't have this mentioned, if you're flying, you should take a significant amount of air out of your tires, or they could blow while you're up in the lower pressure, up when the airplane is up higher in the sky. Also for boxes, you can get creative. I think you could probably even get small mattress covers, small mattress boxes that they were shipped in. I know someone who has a tandem. A tandem is a double bike, so it's really big. You can't find a box that easy at a bike store. So what she did was she got two boxes and taped them together. Then there's the idea of where do you store your box. So if you are going on a trip, let's say from Winnipeg to Vancouver, you're not going to store your box. You're just going to get rid of it. But if you're going from Winnipeg to Regina and back to Winnipeg, when you're in Winnipeg, you should try to see if there's a way that somehow you could store your box. Otherwise, you might have to spend a day looking for a box to get home. Now, bikes. I'm going to go quickly over bikes, and I'm not sure if, yes, good, you see that. Now, the bike, the most important thing I feel with the bike is it has to be maintainable, reliable, and you get replacement parts. So if you have something really, really fancy, if you can't get replacement parts, you're cruising for a bruising. You might not find things for it. And they should have braze-ons. What braze-ons are, on the different parts of the bicycle, you'll have places where you could screw things in. So yeah, and so for instance, you could screw in your racks on, let's say, on your back forks and things like that. Now, you could buy your own bike, and that's the best case. But if you're stuck for whatever reason, or you don't want to fly with a bike, you could rent at the other end. And here's a really creative idea that some people have done. They've arranged, let's say, was this somewhere? I think it was in Austria at a bike store. They bought it from the bike store with the agreement that the bike store will buy it back after their trip. And so they ended up paying, I think buying it for 500 euros and selling it for, I think 400 or something like that. So that was really neat. I guess, you're going to have to pay, you're not going to get the same that you paid for it. But of course you used it a bit, and hopefully it'll be in the same shape. If it's worse, then they might give you less. But that's something that you could do. Either consider buying and selling it right from the same shop, or buying it and then selling it on the free market, through Facebook or whatever, Kijiji, Craigslist, wherever you're at. Now, the two more commonly type of bikes used for touring are a traditional touring bike. And if you guys could see the picture on the left, that's a traditional touring bike. And you'll see that there are, can we go down? Can you just move it down again for a second? Caroline? Sorry, the other way. Go previous.
This one here? This is what you want? Right sorry. There. Yes.
So the one on the left, that one's like a traditional type touring style where you have your panniers. Panniers, by the way, are another name for bag. That's how I say bag in French. That's how a traditional kind of touring bike is set up on the left. And on the right is what's called a bike packing bike. Now, bike packing bike, you'll see that there's nothing hanging off the wheels, where you see most of the stuff off the frame. Those are two that have been around. Now, the one on the left is more geared roughly for road touring. The one on the right is more roughly geared for for off-road. But you can mix and match. You don't have to get stuck on one or the other. But the one on the right is becoming, you see more of it. And when you look at, let's see, when you look at the bike from the front, it's fairly thin. What I mean by is the bags and everything are relatively thin. If you look at the traditional touring bike, the one on the left, it's fairly fat if you look at it from ahead. So now can you scroll, Caroline, to the next one?
Yep.
So there's an example. There you see Megan riding. That's a traditional style. And if you look up above, you'll see two bikes leaning against each other. You see how wide they are? And they're wider than the handlebars. And by the way, if you never had a chance to do this, you have nowhere to lean your bike, you could lean your bikes against each other. You see that? And even if there's nothing on them, you could lean your bikes against each other if you have nowhere else to lean them. Okay. Now, also another kind of cool bike for touring is a folding bike. What's nice about them is they're quite easier to carry and to put on an airplane. Folding bikes often come with their own trailer. So right now, what you've seen was a bike with the panniers on it, and a bike with the bike packing bike. Another way of pulling your stuff carrying your stuff is a trailer. And the trailer gets connected to either the back hub, usually the back hub of your bicycle. Now, mountain bikes are also possible to use, gravel bikes, even racing bikes. They can all be used, but they're going to have their limitations. And of course, there's hybrid bike where you sit up higher, and then there's a fat bike also known as snow bikes. Now I'm going to go to bike type. And this is more like the frame type. And there's steel, chromoly, there's aluminum, carbon fiber. when I did the world trip, I want to make sure I had a chromoly, which is a type of steel, because if I had to get something welded, it would be much easier to find someone who has a welding shop in his backyard to weld steel, but it isn't that easy for aluminum, carbon fiber, of course. Now, we talked a little bit about foldable tire bike already, but there's also tandem bikes. That's where you're riding two people. E-bike, that's where you get electric assist, and that's getting more and more popular. And there's also recumbent. That's a kind where you kind of sit low. The only problem with the recumbent is you're going to have to do more work with your legs because you can't put your body weight over top of it. And also recumbents you can't see as far. Now, one thing though that's really important, if you decide on the pannier system or any system where there's something being on the back, is make sure that your pedals can turn without your heel hitting the pannier. That can happen, and if you don't test that out before your trip, and it happens, you better get creative. So always make sure that that's possible. So that's the traditional touring bike, the one you see on the left. That one has a chainstay. The chainstay is the length from where the chain is. That length is longer, and that's longer for that reason, so that your heel won't easily hit that the pannier. Where other bicycles, racing bikes, mountain bikes, that could happen. So be careful of that. And let's see, I don't know if I talked about it, but another way is a pack sack, okay? Another way to carry stuff. So if you're going for a really small ride, like a one-nighter, pack sack could be all you need. Panniers, they come in waterproof options, and try to get ones that are reflective, and some that are not waterproof can have a rain cover. I think I talked a little bit about the racks. Some bikes actually are sold with racks, and racks can get pretty expensive. They can get like over 250 bucks. Aluminum break easier. Steel is heavier, but more robust. A trailer is another way you can bring your stuff, or a combination of panniers and trailer, or a combination of panniers and bike packing is another way to do it. There's also bags for your handlebar, your top tube bag, your trunk bag, that's the on top of your rack in the back, under seat bag, frame bag. Okay, next topic. Sorry, dude, I'm flying because I know there's a lot of stuff. Tires and tubes. You have to think of, if you're going to be on the road or off-road, you might want to make sure you have wheels that can handle whatever you're going to use. Or whatever you're going to be on. There are kinds of wheels that have, or tires I should say, that have a slick, the part that hits the road is slick, but the edges are knobby, so that it kind of could work pretty good on road and off road. Ideally, if you're riding with somebody else, ideally you would have stuff that's swappable. For instance, if there's two of you going for 1,000, or let's say a 2,000 kilometer trip, you might want to have an extra tire. But do both of you have to have an extra tire? Probably not. But if you both have different kinds of tires, then you're going to have to both carry a tire. But if you have the same kind of tires, like both 26-inch mountain tires, let's say, then you could share that. So consider that when you're traveling. It's not always possible, but it's ideal. Another thing to keep in mind is the valve type. I'm not sure if you have that, Caroline, but there's primarily in North America two types of valves. A Schrader, that's the kind that's really big and wide. That's the kind you have on cars, and that's the kind you could fill up at gas stations. Or there's this thinner one called Presta. Now you can't get the gas station to fit that, to put air in it. However, you could buy an adapter that you'd screw over top of that skinnier valve, and then you could put the gas station air onto it. And if you have a pump, not if you better travel with a pump. You should have, there are pumps that can handle both types of, most of them can handle both types of valves. Now, also with tubes, there's one way you can protect your tube. There's something called a self-sealing tube, where it has some goop in it. And if you, let's say, go over a cactus spine, it might be able to fix the flat for you as you're riding. That's happened to me once. I remember I had that, and I heard it go psst, 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 psst. I don't know if you know what I'm doing, but every time the hole landed on the ground, I wouldn't hear the air coming out. And then so anyway, I said, "Oh, come on, work." I was telling my goop to work, and it did. In about maybe 15 seconds, the hole was sealed. Another thing you could think of or consider our tire liners. That's something that sits between your tire and your tube. That's really a hard, thick plastic that would be very hard for a tack or a nail or a piece of metal to go through. Now, gearing of bikes could be an issue. Now, what we're looking at here is, I'm not sure how familiar you are, but there's several gears in the front, but more of the gears are in the back. In the front, there's usually 1, 2, or 3 gears, and they're called chain rings. In the back, they're cogs. They're anywhere between, let's say, 7 and 12. So the difference in the number of teeth in the front than to the back is what's called a gear ratio. Now, I don't want to get too much into math, but if you take the front teeth divided by the back teeth, so if the front teeth have 20 and the back teeth have, if the front teeth have 40 and the back teeth have 20, that is a 2-to-1 ratio. 40 divided by 20 is 2. And then you multiply that by the size of your wheel. So if your wheel is 27 inches, that's 2 times 27. That means that is a 54-inch gear, okay? Ideally, for touring, you should have gears, ideally, okay? Don't break the bank for this. But ideally, you should have about a 20-inch gear. That means the front maybe could have a 30 and the back could have a 40. So 30 divided by 40 is 0.75. 0.75 times 27, you do the math. But anyway, that's kind of how to figure it out. I could send these formulas and stuff to you guys too if you want. And the reason you need a really small gear is if you get into hills, you might have to start walking. So if you have very big gears, only big gear, like if your smallest gear is still big, it's a good chance you're going to be pushing your bike more. Now there are many types of handlebars. I'll just say them straight: bar ends, drop bars, aero bars, Jones, other customs. Shoes are important. Now you could go without cleats. That's just using regular shoes on regular pedals that don't have anything to snap into the pedal. Now, if you're going to have regular shoes on regular pedals, you should have a stiff sole on the bottom of your shoes. So for instance, if you had flip-flops or bare feet, you're going to have very, very soft sole, of course. So every time you push your pedal, you're being quite inefficient. So if you are just using regular pedals, then make sure that it's very stiff, that sole. Now, there are a lot of clip pedals, or they're called cleats. There are a lot of different styles. The one that works best for walking around and not having to have more than one pair of shoes are what's called SPD. I believe SPD means Shimano pedal. And you can find them anywhere. They're also known as mountain bike pedals. Don't let that fool you. Don't think that, oh my God, I'm putting a mountain bike pedal on a road bike. Don't let that get in your way. There's nothing wrong with having that. What's nice, so you see these sandals here. I don't know if you could see it, but if you look at the one that's on its side, and it's you see these kind of metal round things, that is the clip that would clip into your pedal. And if that clips into your pedal, when you take it out of the pedal, you could walk like a normal person. If you have other road racing style bike shoes, you're going to be walking with your heels down low and your toes up. And it's really weird. And so if you're going to go grocery shopping, there's a good chance you could slip on them, slip on a hard surface. Or if you're going to go for a little hike, it's going to be very difficult. Now, I'm showing you sandals, but it's not just sandals. You can get many, many different styles of fully covered shoes that are SPDs that have the recessed cleat. That's super important. Otherwise, if you don't, you're going to probably have to carry more than one pair of shoes. Often, especially on a week trip, I often just bring one pair of shoes, my SPD shoes, and maybe flip flops for the shower. And that's about it. Um, but it all depends on where you're going. So, for instance, in Tuktoyaktuk last year up in Northwest Territories, we didn't use any kind of clip shoes. We just used, I used hiking boots or hiking shoes, boots, whatever, with really hard soles. Seat, make sure you get your ass used to your seat, okay? Brooks is a Brooks brand is fairly expensive, but it's known to be a quite um, good to ride with. But I've never used them. And there's two things that your butt have to get used to. One is your sit bones. They can really hurt. They can get really bruised on your first days out. So it's best to do some short rides first, 10K, 15K, and then build up. And then there's also the chafing issue. So those are two ways that your butt could end up hurting. Okay, I'm gonna keep on going. Or Caroline, I guess we're getting pretty far along. I'll keep on going until you tell me to stop.
That sounds good. And you know what we might end up doing is maybe take let's take a break in like 2 more slides, say.
Okay.
Just for any questions in case there's anybody who has to leave on time and have
Okay.
questions. And then what we'll do is we'll keep going through it
Okay.
because we are also recording, and that way when folks can watch the recording and watch
Okay,
the whole
cool.
thing as well.
Okay. So I'll keep on going. Now, tools. Tools, it depends on how far you're going. The farther you're going to go and the more remote you're going to go, the more you're going to have to rely on yourself and tools. If you're going very close to cities and bike shops, then it's not as important. But the tools that you should consider having are multi-tools, cluster remover, spoke tool, Allen keys, also known as hex keys, tire levers, those are the most important, and a patch repair kit, and sometimes versatile tools like vice grips, bungee cords, duct tape, tuck tape, carabiners. The reason I say those, this is especially on a longer tour, you never know when you're going to need something that you have to get creative on. And sometimes these help. A chain tool, how to take a chain apart, or you could have what's called a master link. And lubricants also good to have. Replacement parts, important. Tubes. Tire if you're going very far and remote. Spokes if you're going far and remote. Cables, chain links, master chain link. Pump is good to have. A floor pump is good, but it's pretty hard to take if you're going far, except my friends that did the world trip, they carried a bike pump like you see right there. That's a floor pump. That's heavy and it takes a lot of room, but they put it across the rack and up top above their panniers in the back, and they just took it with them. But let's see. There's a hand pumps. Those are usually what people take. There's also these gas cartridges that you could use, but they're only one-time use, so they're not as versatile. And Presta Schrader adapters. I think I told you about that already. And of course, a lock is good to bring. I don't know why I have that in the pub. Fenders could be a hassle, but in some ways they could be a help. So it's up to you whether you want to deal with the hassle, because they can sometimes get in the way. Sometimes they can start rubbing against your wheel, blah, blah, blah. Lighting, front lighting, back lighting, on the helmet, headlamps. There's ones that have a USB and battery option, which I really like. So if you're near power, you can power up with USB, or if you have regular AAA batteries, you can put them in too. It does both. That's nice to have that, because if you're going remote, you might have to rely on batteries. And there's also generator kind of dynamo one where your wheel turning will generate the power to get lighting. Mirrors is good to have. A mirror could have you less stress riding because you know it's coming up from behind. You know if you have to ditch it, let's say. Now mirrors can fit on helmet, glasses, handlebar, on your wrist. Helmet, make sure it's bright, reflective, and ideally with lights. But those are pretty hard to find. If you're going to be tenting, then you have to bring a tent, sleeping gear, bag, possibly, sleeping bag, liner, underpad maybe. Now, do you share or do you have separate tents? It depends on who you're with and how big the tents are. Tarp. What's nice about a tarp is it's multi-purpose. It could be under the tent, it could be over the tent. You could sit on it while you're eating, while you're having your lunch, things like that. Cooking will take up space on in your gear, but you can travel without looking for restaurants. Now you have to consider your fuel type. Some can handle some stoves can handle many different types of fuel, and some can only handle one type. If you go to different places, different countries, or even different states or provinces, you might have a hard time finding maybe white gas or Coleman gas or whatever. So make sure you have that taken care of before you take off, that you know what to expect. And also you have to be careful because sometimes you're not allowed to fly with your stove, definitely without your fuel. So you'll often have to find fuel wherever you go when you get there. Now, fixing something during a trip, especially on longer remote trips. If you support it or constantly in your bike shops, then it's not that big a deal. But if you don't have a mechanic, you must know the following. You must know how to fix a flat by changing tubes, by using patches. You should know, or I say must know, how to adjust your seat height. Also, to take your bike apart, at least partially, to ship, if you're going to do that kind of travel. And you have to know, and you have to be able to reassemble it too. You should know how to turn your handlebars, remove and install your pedals, and take off your wheels. Also, you should know how to install your wheels. And you have to think of the following. A number of bikes have what's called quick release, where you don't need any tools at all. But also, there are some that need an Allen key to screw it off. And then cheaper bikes need wrenches. So make sure you have those tools with you depending on the bike that you have. And also, you must know how to attach and remove your panniers or your trailer. Now, what's nice to know is how to change your spoke tension, or how to change gear or brake cables, or remove your back gear cluster. These are all nice to knows. They're not as often needed as the first list that I gave you. Now, let's say you're trying to get help or getting to help. Well, think of bike stores. Think of Google, Facebook, YouTube, bike forums. Or carry a bike repair book or maintenance book with you, or ask around, or hitchhiking, take a bus, cab, ride sharing. CAA, I don't know if everyone knows that, but CAA has also a bike, what's the word? You can make a call if you have a problem with your bike, and they'll help you out. CAA is the Canadian Automobile Association. And I'm guessing that extends to the United States, because I've used CAA in the United States, and there it's called AAA. And what I mentioned earlier too is that ideally it's good to have exchangeable gear with your riding buddies. That's not always possible, but the more is exchangeable, the better for both of you. Clothing.
So,
yes,
Frank, I'll pause you here, and what we'll do is we'll open up the Q&A just in case there are any folks who have to go. Okay. And then we'll return to the presentation in just a second.
Okay.
So I will stop sharing here. Oh boy, we got some questions. Holy moly, I can't see the chat and screen share at the same time. Participating from New York City, are we permitted to enter and cycle tour Canada? Haha, what time is puck drop face off on the ice tonight? I was told that I have a face for radio. I can't speak to the hockey, but the border is still closed to non-essential travel. The tire boot you mentioned uses a Tyvek or Mylar insert. Think the bag for a FedEx.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Frank.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Go for it.
Oh, sorry. Am I okay to interrupt right now? Is this
absolutely?
My understanding is you could fly over the border. You can't drive over the border. I don't know about bicycle over the border, but you could fly. But you probably have to do your 2 weeks. Now that's, of course, the current situation. It might be different in a week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks from now.
Good to know. Okay, the tire boot you mentioned uses a Tyvek or Mylar insert.
Okay.
Thanks bag for a FedEx or UPS package, bag for potato chips, wrapper for energy bar. So that's a good thought. I know somebody who had to boot their tire with a dollar bill at one
Oh
point.
yeah. Oh yeah. We've done it. You have to do MacGyver stuff. Whatever you see, like so. If you get a hole in your tire and you got nothing to fix it with, yeah. Well, and usually you don't. You could have what's called boots that you buy at the store, or a cigarette package on the side of the road. Or yeah, I've used a $5 bill, so mine worked better than the $1 bill. That's why I'm
I
teasing.
think
And
so.
it's America,
At
but
least in Canada.
yeah, now that's different though than the liner I was talking about. Eh? The liner I was talking about goes around the entire wheel, where these ones that the person mentioned, it's a very good idea. Is what you do when you're stuck, you know, and because otherwise, your tube will start pushing through the hole in your tire, and then you're going to have a lot of problems. What some people did once too was when they really got stuck and their pump wasn't working, they put grass in their tires. This is in
Oh
a
my
trailer.
gosh.
They shoved grass in their trailer tire because they couldn't fix it, and that got them to the next town. So yeah, I like those kind of I don't know if you call them cycling hacks, but I'm glad that you brought it up. Yeah. So sorry, continue.
Cool. Yeah, we had another one. Having a writing instrument, i.e. pen, to mark the location of the puncture on your tire tube. Draw a circle around the puncture and draw an X inside the circle over the puncture. This way you'll know the exact location of the puncture when patching. After identifying the location, you may want to put the tube down on the ground, pick it up, and not know where the puncture was. Mark it. So that's a good comment.
Yes, yeah, and can I throw something else in there too? The thing about marking it too is you could have something in there that is going to cause the next puncture. There could be a piece of metal in there. So when you find that puncture and you circle it, that's good because you're not going to have to look for it again. But when you find that, then feel, in fact, feel for something that could be there. But be careful because you could scratch or cut your finger. But where you find that puncture hole is a good place to possibly find something that is going to cause another hole. Now, another trick that people do is when they put their tire on their rim, there's a label on the tire. You put the label right where the stem is, your valve. And if your label is there, and let's say you find let's say you take your tire off and you don't have anything to mark it with, and you forgot, and oh my goodness, I wasn't paying attention. But if you know that if the label is always lined up with your valve, and you see that the hole or that I'm trying to say so many things at once. In your tube, if you see that the hole is 4 inches from the valve, then you know you go to your label on your tire and you look 4 inches left and right of that label to see where the possible culprit is. And you could feel, especially in that spot, if there is some piece of metal or glass that hasn't come out yet. So they both, I like both ideas, but sometimes you might not have a pencil, especially something, or a pen, especially something that might be different than your black tire. But again, another good trick for the road. I'm glad they shared that.
Yeah. And then a question from John. What is a good bike lock to take on extended rides?
Oh, there's so many different kinds, and all depends on how paranoid you are. Like, so the more paranoid, sorry, paranoid is not the right word. How concerned you are. The more concerned you are, the bigger and heavier that's going to be. So I'm not really sure. It really, you have to decide on the weight and volume it's going to take. But I guess those U-locks are probably pretty good. I know that you could, some people freeze them to break them. I don't know. Megan had a cool one, a folding one.
Hey, Frank, can I chime in?
Yes, please do.
I think the size of lock depends on how long you might be leaving your bike alone. Like, if you always plan on being with your bicycle, then, just some sort of not so heavy duty lock might do it. It depends how remote you are, or if you're in cities and stuff a lot, then you might want something a bit more heavy duty. But yeah, I would say I like my lock that folds up, but it's pretty heavy, so it all depends. When we did our trip in Tuck, we just kind of took some chintzier ones with us that didn't weigh very much because we didn't think we'd be away from our bikes too often. So I think it really depends on your situation.
And to add to that, if there are two of you, sometimes one person will go in shopping while the other person hangs out with the bikes, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So so that's kind of almost a personal preference. And again, like Megan said, the weight and all kind of stuff can make a difference. Maybe the best thing to do is go online and look for a list of them and compare them.
Yeah, the other thing is too, of course, it is your main mode of transportation, so you don't want to take it too lightly, but you don't want to be carrying too much weight. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Megan.
All right, great. We will, I think, get back to the presentation. I am just going to pull it back up here. Give me a second. Let's
As you're pulling stuff off, could I keep on talking?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I think
let's
that's a
do that.
great idea.
Okay, so now I'm just going to touch on clothing. Clothing, ideally bright, reflective, functional, multi-purpose. Rain gear, wind gear, quick dry is nice as well. Also, are you going to be in the winter? You know, that kind of stuff you have to consider. Many people do not ride with racing or cycling clothes. Don't be surprised. For instance, if you're going to go to some event where you need pants, well, if you only have cycling pants, then you're going to kind of look goofy. So all depends, though. I'm not saying don't wear cycling clothes, but consider it's not always going to be the best option. And some people only do cycling clothes, and that's it. They might just have two pair, and they just wash their clothes every day. And usually it'll be hand washed because you don't always have places to wash that easily. But if you are going to get cycling clothes, if there's one that I do suggest, again, it is an imperative, are cycling pants because they keep your butt a little bit more comfortable. And also think of what you're going to do for non-riding clothes. So I often, like on my world trip, I wore zipper pants, you know, pants that have the zipper that comes off around your knees. And I rode in that. But sometimes I rode with underwear that had pads in them. That's a way that you could do it without having to have cycling pants. And also, if you're going to be in remote places, you might consider some soap to wash your clothes. Personal items, things for chafing, before and after cream. There's like stuff called butt balm or udder balm. And then there's like stuff for diaper rash. So some stuff you put before the ride, some after. Ideally, you don't have to wear anything, but in case you do have that problem, or sorry, you don't have to put anything on. Toiletries, whatever you need, those personal things. Eye protection, sunglasses, first aid stuff, medical information, emergency contact information, toilet paper, or I mentioned that? No, I didn't. Sunscreen, lip balm, insect repellent, quick dry towel, medication list if you have any medication. Or another thing, which is kind of good, is I don't know if you ever heard of, you might have heard of Medic Alert. I think it's called Medic Alert. Also, there's something called Road ID. that you put on your wrist or your ankle that gives you your information of, let's say you're taking any important meds that people need to know if you're unconscious, who to contact, a phone number, things like that. That's good for to have with you. Food, water, nutrition, medication. Where you cook, think of stove type and fuel. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Cooking utensils and tools. Of course, that takes up more room, but then you have more. Cooking takes time, but you have more flexibility. So it's up to you on how you want to handle that. Restaurants, grocery stores, hosts will feed you if you're staying at people's homes. How much food do you carry? Consider dehydrating some of your food. Water bottles. Water bottles can be held on your frame, your forks behind your seat, in your panniers. Food, water safety. I mentioned earlier, you should be able to peel, boil, or cook it if it's not bagged or in a box that's safe. Water filtering or treating. You have to consider that if you're in places where you can't find water easily. And we had to do that in Tuktoyaktuk last year. You need enough calories when you're riding. You're going to eat more. Restaurants that have all you can eat usually cringe when cyclists come in cycle touring, because they definitely don't make money on cycle tours that are going by. The food you get should be resilient for travel. So for instance, bananas aren't going to be as resilient as an apple, let's say. Security. One thing I do, depending on where I'm traveling, is I take a fake wallet. It's a real wallet, but it has fake stuff in it. Real cash, but not a lot, and old expired credit cards. So if they steal from me, they're not going to look at the expiration date. They're going to steal and run. But then that saves me one potential loss of my stuff. Put cash in more than one spot. Don't look rich. Body wallets. That's wallets that go around your neck, around your waist, around your leg. And send copy of lists of to your own email or to someone that you trust, like a sibling or a parent or whatever, or a spouse, of things like credit card information. But you want to, credit card information, you might want to put a code in there, so you won't actually put the last four numbers exactly the same, or whatever. Medication list, passport and number, glass prescription information, travel itinerary, like flight number, dates, times, phone numbers, confirmation numbers, stuff like that. It's good to have that, and it's good to send it to yourself in an email, and still, though, have it printed out and carried somewhere in a waterproof area on your bike. Now, costs, traveling there, sleeping, food, insurance, bike, gear, clothes, visas, gifts, consumables, surprises, which could sometimes be a lot, entertainment, crossing national borders. Now, I never mentioned this, but I'm going to say it. You never know. Bribes, you never know. Money, how are you going to carry it? Credit card, debit, via smartphone, PayPal, ATMs, cash. A number of countries, the ATMs will not work if you don't have a four-number PIN. So make sure you have that considered before you go to some countries. Navigating, physical maps. What's nice about a physical map, I mean like a paper map, or there's also not just paper maps. There are waterproof maps that you could get. Or some people, what do you call it when you put that stuff over on top of something to make it clear? Oh, goodness. So, I'm trying to say too much.
Laminated?
Yeah, that's it. Laminated. Thanks. And you can get them, it's good, especially for the big picture. You can get them at bookstores, online, gas stations, stuff like that. GPS. GPS are nice because you could follow a route. And also, if you're not familiar with this, there are things called offline maps. So for instance, for Google, if you're in a place where there's no data, no cell coverage, you're kind of stuck if you want to use it through using your data. But you could download your map before going into a place that doesn't have data, and you could still use your map to get around. So consider offline maps. Did you bring a compass? Maybe, depends where you are. Another way to navigate, ask people. Wi-Fi and data. Consider SIM cards, local or far-reaching, satellite. Like some SIM cards, actually, I believe some work worldwide now. And of course, satellite will get you a lot more. Wi-Fi, don't be scared to ask if you go to, if someone's putting you up or if you're going into a restaurant or something. Electronics, consider recharging, and be sure that you have the country-specific plugs or country-specific adapters. So we consider solar charging, battery packs, carrying batteries, memory cards, computer, tablet, smartphone, bike odometer, speedometer, things like that you have to consider. Communications, text, WhatsApp, messenger, email, phone, physically post. When we were traveling together in South America, this is in the year 2000, we weren't always together. So we said that anytime we got into a town, we go to the town square. Every town square had a church. Every church had a front door. Every church had a right front door. We would post something saying, was here at 3 o'clock, found a place to stay, and, you know, or something like that. That's another way. You have to get your message or whichever way you can, because you can't always rely on electronics and your batteries. Also via friends and family. Sometimes if you can't get in touch with your friend, it might be good to have someone at home to contact and say, okay, Joe, I can't find Bill. I'm somewhere in Peru, near Lima, blah, blah, blah. Now, Bill, if he can't find you, maybe he'll call Joe or contact Joe somehow. That's only, you know, in really tight situations, but you never know. Keeping others posted, blogging, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and all those other types. Recording a trip, photos, body or bike fastened camera like a GoPro, drone. Last year we found people on the Dempster Highway where they had a drone beside them. But the only thing is it only lasted about 10 minutes and the battery would run out. But some people that are really into it might do that. So the drone was programmed to stay like 20 meters from them or something. Blogging, journaling, Facebook, etc., Google Photos, dealing with other people. Remember, you're sharing the road with cars, and remember that you're an ambassador of wherever you come from. You're an ambassador for cyclists as well. Signaling. When you're signaling and you put your arms out, if you're by yourself, then it's nice to do that for vehicles. But if you're with people, it's also good to call it out. So if you're turning right, put your arm out like you're turning right, but also say turning right, stopping, because the people behind you aren't necessarily always looking at you or always looking up. Right signal, by the way, can be done with your right arm extended. Sorry, Caroline, if that doesn't work with safe cycling. My understanding is you put your left arm bent upwards, but you could also put your right arm sticking out, just like your left.
And I think as you're traveling internationally, you pointing where you're going, so using your right arm for right turns, is more internationally understood. We do teach both the right and the alternative right, so both the kind of pointing up with the left hand and straight out with the right. But I think for international travel, the right is better.
Cool. Also, if you're being hosted, please offer to help the host, whoever's hosting you. If someone's staying at your house, if you're staying at someone's house, offer to do the dishes or whatever it is. Just offer. And good, clear, timely communication with your hosts is good. So, for instance, the cyclist that contacted me 2 days ago, then yesterday said, okay, we're going to be a day late. You know, that's good to keep me posted. And that's just courtesy. And it's remember, you are a ambassador for cyclists and wherever you come from. Prepping for the trip. Ideally, start small and build up experience and your gear. Don't buy, I don't want to say don't hard, but don't buy high-end touring bike if you're just trying it out for the first time and likely. Consider borrowing or renting a bike at first. Don't have a touring bike, I'll forget that. Also consider dry runs. You know, like if you're in Thunder Bay, go for a ride with all your stuff to Kekabeka, camp at Kekabeka and come back. And you'll see what worked and what didn't work. Getting in shape. Before the tour, ideally, you get in shape. You get your butt in shape for your seat, and you get your body in shape. So you get your ligaments in shape, your muscles in shape. And also something in a bike, you know, if it's going to break, sometimes it'll be right soon, not always, of course. But you have your doctor here, you have your bike shops here. A lot of people figure they'll get in shape as they ride, and that is true. But sometimes after like 200 kilometers, after a number of days, they start getting this nagging thing in their knee, and if they did that before, they could have dealt with it before their trip. So I'm not saying you can't do that, but I suggest you do stuff before the trip. Now, other sources of information, Adventure Cycling Association is a very good source. You can find them on the internet. Warmshowers.org, cyclingabout.com. I'm just giving you just a few of them. Crazy Guy on a Bike, pedaling.com, smartphone apps. There's a lot of smartphone cycling apps, cycling route apps, map apps, talk to other touring people, think of Facebook groups, and many, many other internet sites. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Frank. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
I know that, this for me was a topic that I definitely wanted to learn more about. So we do still have a couple of people on the call. So if you have any additional questions, please type them in the chat. But I also have some questions. So while I kind of wait to see if any more questions come up in the chat, I just wanted to ask if you can share your favorite touring story.
Oh my God, my favorite story?
Like one great thing that happened or something that was really interesting or, just whatever you find to be a really cool touring story.
Well, yes, this is part of my tour. I'm legally blind. I don't see that well. When I was in Ecuador, in Quito, I stayed in a hostel and got to know a fella, and got to know well enough a fella that lived in Ecuador, and his dad was a shaman. Oh no, his uncle is a shaman, and and there's no cure for my eye problem. So I thought, what the heck? I'm gonna try the shaman out. Now, normally I wouldn't just go to any shaman because you don't know who's a fake and who's real. But I got to know this fella before he knew anything about my interest in seeing his uncle. So I asked him, hey, can I see your uncle? And he said, sure. So we had to then take a bus and then go into the Amazon. No, not the Amazon. We're on the other side. We're in the jungle area, but on the west side of the Andes. And as we started walking into his plantation, the banana plantation, he got a phone call. Now, just before that, like a couple days before that, I met the woman he was working with, a woman from Oregon who's doing a PhD work on a language that's dying. You know how a lot of indigenous languages are dying? And his people, this guy's name is Eduardo, his people were losing they're called Satchili people, and their language is called Safiki. Anyway, as we're walking through the plantation, she phones him, and he has a satellite phone. And remember, this is the year 2000, okay? It's not now. It wasn't 2018 or whatever. It was a while longer, a time ago. Anyway, she's talking to him on this phone. And then he says, hey, Frank, you want to talk to Carol? Oh, hey, Carol, good to see you again. I hope it goes well. Okay, Frank, I heard you're going to see Eduardo's uncle, blah, blah, blah. So that was as we were walking. We continued walking, and about half an hour later, we come to his house, and it's on stilts, and he's not there. His uncle is not there. And so we sit down, and how does he get a hold of his uncle? Remember, we were just talking Oregon, from a jungle area in Ecuador. We were just talking to someone on a satellite phone. Now we go to look for his uncle, and what does he do? He puts his hands around his mouth and goes, like he's calling him through his voice. And then we didn't hear anything. We waited 10 minutes. We did it again, and then we heard something back. And then 5 minutes later, there's his uncle shows up. Now this guy's a shaman. I don't know if people understand shamans. Some people may call them medicine man, stuff like that, or healers. And he come in, and he had khaki clothes, a khaki hat on, and a machete in his hand. And he had, these Satchili people had redness on their head. So I found that really funny. And then when he worked on me, He was doing a ceremony to try to fix my eyes, and at one point he had his hands on my head, like holding it tight, and he took one hand off, and my eyes were closed. I wasn't watching. It was dark anyway, and my vision isn't that good in the dark. So he, I think he swallowed something, and then I hear, psst, he spit on my head. So whatever, and I thought, I almost started laughing, and my friend Tad, who was with me, was recording this on his phone. And this is, oh my goodness, not on his phone, on his camera. We didn't have this thing on phones before. Anyway, I was almost going to laugh, but I thought, I have to be respectful. This guy is, he's serious, and I am serious, but I just wasn't expecting to have my head spit on. And I thought, okay, well, I need a shower anyway. That's one. And it's so cool when I asked him. I asked him stuff so I said in English to my friend Tad. I knew a little bit of Spanish. I said it to Tad in English. Tad then changed it to Spanish, and then the Spanish was then translated to Sachili, and then it went from Sachili to Spanish back to English to me. It was so cool to be part of that, and that's something I'll never forget. And I have that video somewhere too.
Cool. Great. We had another question come in, and I have a related question. So my related question is, I know that Megan has some strong feelings about liking her bike lock. Megan, what model do you have? Do you know?
I think it's an Arbus.
It's the Abus folding lock?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if the person you're traveling with has one, then they actually connect together, which is quite nice. Mine is the really heavy-duty one. That's all steel, and so it weighs a few pounds. But my dad has one where just where the connection is steel, and the rest is plastic, funny enough. And it's really, really light, but it's not as safe as mine is. But I really like that for like maybe touring because it's a lot lighter. But I don't want to jinx myself or anything, so I'm going to knock on wood while we're talking that my lock has been amazing and I've never had any issues. Like meaning that somebody's stolen it or anything like that, like my bicycle that I've been locked.
Great. Frank, do you have any other feelings about lock?
No.
Okay.
Well, I think
some people feel really strongly.
I think a combination actually is good. So if you lose your key, because if you lose your key, you're in trouble.
I like my key lock so I don't forget my combination.
Yeah,
so I guess it depends on your personality, right? I don't lose things, but I forget things.
Yeah.
Great. And the related question that John asked was, what do you do with your bike overnight? How do you secure your bike while you're sleeping in a tent?
Well, some people, oh my goodness, here's another story. Some people, if they have a big enough tent, they bring it in the tent with them. Now, it's very few, but I met this guy from Australia, a crazy guy. He said, if I could ride my bike through my tent, then that's how I decide to have that tent. It was like a 6-person, 8-person tent. He had his bike inside, but that's not very common. So you could lock it up. What I would often do is lock it up, say, to a picnic table or to a tree or something like that. But if I don't have that, I will put my tent pole, one of my poles, through my bicycle. So like I'd lie my bicycle by my tent, and like say, so when I say through my bicycle, let's say through the spokes. And so that part of my bicycle is now, my bike's attached to my tent. So if someone's going to steal it, they probably won't realize that it's connected to the tent. Then I'll hopefully get woken up. And in the meantime, it'll still be locked. That's sometimes what I've done.
That's a really interesting idea that I have never heard before.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank, did you just make that up? How many times have we gone touring? That's the first I've heard of it.
Well, yeah, but we were never in a spot. We were never in a spot where it was really scary to you're gonna get stuff stolen. But I was in Argentina, and oh my goodness, in fact, um, oh, it was super, super, super hot. I think it was that day that it hit 45 degrees, and I had no clothes on. I was sleeping right on top of my thermarest. That was it. And a cop came and asked me to show me his ID, my ID and stuff. So I said, please wait a minute. I had to get something on, and I had my bike on my tent like connected to my tent, like I said. And he demanded, and actually I didn't mind. He said, you take your bike into the gas station and you keep it in there and lock it in there, because he's doing it for my safety. I didn't realize, and I really appreciated it. So it depends where you are, Megan. You know, you could be somewhere like sometimes you're camping in cities, like in France or in Japan. We camped in cities, and you don't know. In Japan, things aren't stolen very often, but no, I did do that. We've never had to do it because we were never in a place that we felt so nervous that our stuff's going to get stolen and had nowhere else to connect it to.
Great.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty neat. And then a lot of the time, when you're touring with somebody, like, you know, you'll lock your bikes together too, and then also to the picnic table. Or I think, Frank, one time we put a tarp over top of them too, like or like put them in like near your campsite, but disguise them. You know, like you kind of be crafty about it.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I would take all my panniers and put them in the tent. Again, it depends though. If you feel like there's no one going to be around, no one for 1,000 kilometers, that's one thing. But if you're in a place where you're a little bit unsure, then yeah. A friend of one person who stayed with me, a Warm Showers host, I'm not guest, I should say, in Seattle, Washington. He found himself being kicked and rolled. He was in his tent, and a bunch of kids. He was in like a city park, and city parks in North America tend to be sketchy. And these kids were like kicking him and having fun, like just teasing him. But either way, though, it was not good. No, no, no. Sorry, this is in Colombia. In Colombia, he got his bike stolen in Seattle. Sorry, it's too many stories. Anyway, so he didn't know what to do, and he was like, you know, it's dark. He's reaching around. He wanted to find his knife. He finally found his knife, and wherever up was, he took his knife, stuck it through his tent, because he figures, I'm going down. I may as well go down fighting. And he slit his tent, and the tent fell down, you know, because now it has nothing to hold on to. And this guy was massive, and these are like high school kids. They all ran away. But I don't know. I'm not sure what I was getting at with that. But sometimes there are places where it's more dangerous than others, and I think you have more chances of kids and stuff like that giving you a hard time in city parks more than in, let's say, state parks or provincial parks or national parks. And in those, so in a place like a city park, I try to be a little bit more extra careful. If I'm staying at someone's house, if they let me keep it in the house, that would be great. Or anywhere where it's hard to find. Or what you could do too is take a wheel off. So if someone steals it, it's gonna be more difficult for them to ride away with it. They'd have to carry it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. I don't see any new questions in the chat. I do have another question that I'm hoping that you guys can answer. This weekend, I went on a bike packing trip, but I'd like to do a cycle tour. And I have a senior dog who cannot accompany me any more of her own momentum. And so I pulled her in a bike trailer.
Nice.
And it was sure a lot of work. So she weighs about 65 pounds.
Wow.
I'm wondering if you can speak at all to, any recommendations for the best way to carry a canine companion or a small child or anything else heavy.
Well, I know some people that have done it. In fact, I toured with a friend. She brought her dog in a buck trailer, but I don't think her dog was that heavy. I think it was maybe 40 pounds, I'm guessing. And I put up a person crossing Canada 2 weeks ago that had a dog with him, again, about a 40-pounder. I could connect you with these people, maybe to give you some other, like for them to give you better advice, because I don't know if I don't have any personal experience there. We almost did it though in Vancouver Island. So no, but by the way, I'm doing a bike ride, a 2-day bike ride to Scriber in a couple of days. But I am going to probably put a 4-day. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't tell people this. I also organize tours and do these supported tours where we carry your gear from place to place. I do 3, 4, 5-day ones. Usually they're in the northern states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, but now it's going to be in the Thunder Bay area. So Thunder Bay, up Armstrong Road, or Pass Lake, or Nipigon, or Kikabeka, or a combination of. So if anyone's interested, they can get in contact with me through Caroline.
Cool. That is great. Are we good to wrap up, or is there anything else you guys want to add, Frank and Megan?
I want to say something. If you're wondering, just do it. What is cool about cycle touring is every day is a separate adventure, especially if you're going from place to place to place. It's such a cool way to pass vacation time and stuff like that, and you come with memories, and sometimes you make friends that could be forever, and the friends could be people you meet on the road that aren't necessarily riding with you. So if you're wondering, just do it.
Thanks. That's awesome. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us, and hopefully this can, be a great resource, because we do have the recording as well that folks can check out for however long. So thank you very much, Frank, and also Megan for pitching in your ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, no problem. And I think Frank had a great idea. If you're thinking of it, then obviously it's intriguing and you should give it a shot. As somebody who's fairly new to cycle touring, doing like small ones is always a really good idea. I think my first one was riding back from Armstrong, Ontario, and I think it took us like 3 days or something. But just like Frank said, like something small. It doesn't have to be extravagant, and you get to get your feet wet and get some confidence, and from there kind of build off of that.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. We will wrap up with that. And thank you both very much. So I'll end the call now, and it's kind of awkward for the presenters because it just kicks you out. But if you want to debrief, we can do it by email. So, okay. Thanks you.
Everyone.
Thanks, Caroline. Bye.
Bye.
Good job, Frankie.
Thanks, Megan.